let's take you now to this live event. Home Affairs Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi is giving a media briefing on the general visa, critical work visa, remote work visa, the trusted employee scheme, as well as other points. Let's take you live there now.
The Minister to take us through the statement, and then we'll take questions thereafter. Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director and Spokesperson in the Department, Mr. Thabo Mokgolo, the Director General of the Department of Home Affairs, Mr. Tommy Makode, members of the media. Good afternoon. We had a apology from the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Nzuza, who is ill disposed. But anyway, let me go straight into the issues that brought me here today. But before that, I would like to mention the Mr. Yusuf Simons, who is connecting from Cape Town, is there not as the provincial manager of Home Affairs in Cape Town, but it's because when this Operation Vulindlela was being undertaken, he was the acting Deputy Director General of Immigration. So he's joining our meeting in that regard. There you can see him on the screen. It has got nothing to do with his new posting of being head of Home Affairs in the Western Cape. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2022, the President of the Republic of South Africa, in his State of the Nation address, mentioned that South Africa will be reviewing the entire visa system to make it easier to foreign nationals and investors to apply for visas such as tourist, business, and work visa. To give effect to his decision, the President appointed the former Director General of the Department of Home Affairs, Mr. Mavuso Msimang, to the Operation Vulindlela project. A report with recommendations was tabled to this effect. This report contained 4 process recommendations and 4 policy recommendations. In other words, in the process recommendations was a change of processes with the Department of Home Affairs is engaged with whenever they process visas. And in the policy recommendations are policies that need to be changed and new ones that need to be added. But unfortunately, some of the recommendation needs a change of law. And you are aware you can't change a law in the recommendation. So I do notice that some media houses know about the recommendations and they might be confused why they are not on the amendment regulations. And I'm trying to explain that nobody change a law through a regulations. It's not done like that. Regulations are based on the laws. So if you need to change the law, you must amend that law. And I'm sure you are aware that in terms of immigration laws in the department, we are busy with the process of the white paper, where we are saying we are going to repeal most of the laws that work in the area of immigration, being the Citizenship Act of 1995, the Refugee Act of 1998, and the Immigration Act of 2002. So most of the changes will appear there. For now, we are only making changes that can be changed through regulations. And so those changes, will find them in terms of 4 process ones and 4 policy ones. One of the new things that has been recommended is the introduction of a remote work visa, which there's been a call for a remote work visa because it's very important. And I want to explain exactly what it is. There are people who want to stay in South Africa, but while they are working for other countries, in other words, they are not employed by South Africa. They are employed by other countries, mostly in the fields of auditing, IT, finance. Those areas you can do them for your employer while you are not in that particular country. So we allow them the remote work visa to come and sojourn in South Africa while they are working for those particular countries. And maybe people may ask, what's the advantage to the country? The advantage to the country is that these are high earners. During that period when they are working, they will be spending money in the country, they'll be staying in hotels, they'll be hiring people, etc., etc. And that's why it's important. And that's why the salary they earn is also very important. Nobody is going to get a remote working visa if they earn less than 1 million South African rands in terms of their salary. We also introduce the point-based system for general work visa as contemplated in Section 9.2 of the Immigration Act. And I've noticed that there was also a bit of confusion in this regard. It might be important for me to read for you what Section 19.2 of the Immigration Act says in order for you to understand what we are dealing with here. Can you try to get it for me here? So we've introduced a point-based system to general work visa. And I've seen that there have been some confusion between the general work visa and the critical skills visa. I want you to understand the differentiation between the two. Section 19.2, the heading there is in the Immigration Act, number 13 of 2000. The heading there is work visa. It says a general work visa may be issued by the Director General to a foreigner not falling within a category contemplated in subsection 4 and who complies with the prescribed requirements. There are two issues here. They say anybody who is not falling within the category of subsection 4 of this section 19, that person and who complies with certain prescribed requirements will get a general work visa. And I think that confusion was seen in quite a number of media reports. Now, your first question is, what is this subsection 4? Subsection 4 of section 19 says, subject to any prescribed requirements, a critical skills work visa may be issued by the Director General to an individual possessing such skills or qualifications determined to be critical for the Republic from time to time by the Minister, by notice in the Government Gazette, and to those members, this other part is not important. What they mean is that the Minister on a frequent basis will issue a critical skills visa to particular people. Now, it is reported that this critical skills visa has been done away with. And that worries us a lot because it keeps on being repeated. We haven't done away with the critical skills visa. What we are doing is that we have just changed the manner in which it was done. In the past, a critical skills visa was issued every 4 years. The Minister of Home Affairs is supposed to gazette skills that are critical to the economy of the country. But Home Affairs does not have the capacity, nor the knowledge, nor the skill to know what is required. What Home Affairs does is to go to the Department of Higher Education. The department usually asks the Human Science Research Council. The Human Science Research Council will work with other institutions, including the Labour Market Survey, to put up a list of skills which they think are critical for the economy of the country. And some people believe a critical skill is that which is prestigious. If I've got a PhD in some particular area, it ought to be a critical skill. No, it's not. A critical skill is that which is critical for the functioning of the economy. But there are few South Africans, and that's the key word. There are few South Africans who can do that work. And so we are forced to go beyond the borders of this country to look for those people with such skills. That's what is called the critical skill. Once the profession you have got appears on that critical skills list, which will have been gazetted by the Minister of Home Affairs, and you get a letter of employment, then Home Affairs is forced to give you a critical skills visa. It's one of the easiest visas to give. And we don't usually waste time, contrary to belief, to give a critical skills visa, because all it wants is the profession to which you belong gazetted there in the government gazette? That's one. Number two, has any employers given you a letter of appointment that they need you to come and work in South Africa? Once you give those, then we give you a critical skills visa. So there's no way we can cancel it. It's not necessary, it's still important. All we did was that we can no longer wait for 4 years to recognize a skill as critical. The minister does it as is required. In other words, if any institution come to prove to us that a particular skill is critical, then we gazette it. For instance, after the gazette was passed in 2022, yes, in February 2023, we had to gazette certain professions in the healthcare system, certain types of nurses and certain type of doctors. Later on in September, the Minister of Agriculture showed us that the issue of veterinary surgeons, veterinary doctors is very important. It's a critical skill. Then we gazetted it. We never waited for 4 years. So these are some of the changes that we are doing. Now, the second thing on what I've read here, on section 19, subsection 2, is a person gets a general work visa if they comply to certain requirements. That is in the Act, and it's one of the things we have changed. What are the certain requirements? Those requirements for the general work visa are found in Regulation 19, not Section 19 of the Act. Not Regulation 19, Regulation 18 of the Act, 18.2, and I want to read it to you to understand. It says an application for a general work visa shall be accompanied by 1, a letter issued to the prospective employer by the Department of Labor to the effect that a certification has been able to be issued to the department confirming that despite a diligent search, the prospective employer has been unable to find a suitable citizen or permanent resident with qualifications or skills and experience equivalent to those by the applicant. By the applicant here being the foreign national. So it means the Department of Labor must be satisfied first that the employer has searched. Now you will agree with me, that's a very tedious job. It wasn't done in most cases. You can go and check in the hospitality industry, in domestic work, in agriculture. There are people who are general workers there, but they never went through this process. And there are already many of them. What we have now done is to do away with this process of having to go to the Department of Labor and proving that a South African cannot do the work. We have now done away with that, and we are saying we are going to give you a general work visa based on the point system. That's where the point system comes in. It has got nothing to do with critical skills. We give certain points. When those points reach a particular mark, then you get your visa. So you don't have to, in other words, we sidestep the Department of Labor. It's no longer going to be part of our process. That's what we mean by the point-based system, and I need to repeat it. The point-based system is about the general work visa, whereby you no longer have to go to the Department of Labor and Employment, but based on certain points which you are going to allocate. And I want to emphasize, the manner in which the points are allocated is still going to be gazetted. It's not in the Gazette now. For public comments, members of the public are going to have to comment. I thought this is very clear. So please, we did not do away with the critical skills list. The critical skill list still exists. The only change on the critical skills list is that it doesn't have to wait for 4 years. Any person who can show us that a particular skill is critical and we get convinced, we will gazette it. So we'll gazette again and again and again. That's the only change. But the critical skills visa stays. The general work visa, on the other hand, you are no longer going to need to go to the Department of Labor. We are going to give you points. On the basis of that points, you have to reach a particular mark, then you get your general work visa. And this is still going to be gazetted. That means the points. Now, the other thing is the introduction of the trusted employer scheme. What do we mean by a trusted employer scheme? When a company is invested in South Africa and they want to employ certain people who come from another country, they are required to produce certain documents, including your qualifications and letters of work experience and many other issues, which you might require from many parts of the world. Those were collected by Home Affairs, and it was taking time. Like even going to SAQA and ask if this qualification is equivalent to a relevant qualification in South Africa. Those were tedious things that were delaying visas, including police clearance and all that. Now, in the trusted employer scheme, what we say is this: employer, you are the ones who want this person to come from a particular country and work here. Go around and collect all these documents yourself. We in Home Affairs, we stand aside. You rush because you are the ones who want this employee. The speed with which you acquire the documents will show how fast you want this employee, rather than going to knock at the Department of Home Affairs. Once that employer brings this information, we don't question them. On the basis of the information they give us, we give them. We put them on the trusted employer scheme immediately. But there's a proviso. We are going to do random checks. And if the employer is found to have misrepresented facts in getting that trusted employer scheme, then the employer will be taken out completely out of the scheme. And the trusted employer scheme has already started. Certain employers got them. And people might like to ask, how does an employer qualify for a trusted employer scheme? Which employers do you give? We have got certain categories. We don't give it to any employer. Number one, that employer must be prepared to invest more than 100 million rand in the country, 100 million or more in the country. And it must be proven, not just declare that in a meeting somewhere or in a press conference declare that I'm going to invest 100 million. We must be able to prove that 100 million has been invested. If you invest less than 100 million, you won't belong to the trusted employer scheme. Number two, you have to employ 100 people or more. And out of the people who have employed, 60% must be South Africans, not less. Otherwise, we won't put you on the trusted employer scheme. 60% of the people you employ have to be South Africans, and there must be more than 100 employees in your company. If you have got less than 100, it means your company is too small to belong to the trusted employer scheme. Number three, we want skills transfer. Whatever you are going to invest in South Africa, and you want certain people from other countries to run your investment, South Africans must benefit. So you must show us a plan that we are going to transfer skills to South Africans, including even financing those who might need to degrees and all that. We want that from that employer. 4, the sector in which you are investing. We're not going to give a trusted employer in any sector. We've put number 1 on the list, energy. You know that South Africa has got an energy problem. We want investors who are coming here, who are coming to invest in energy, especially energy generation. Then you belong to the trusted employer scheme. Secondly, those who are going to invest in infrastructure in the country, because you are aware we've got a problem of infrastructure, we'll give them preference over the others. It's not that the others are generally thrown away, but we give preferences to companies in energy and infrastructure. The last thing, the 5th one, your BEE credentials. The Department of Labor must show us, because we don't know how to do BEE credentials in Home Affairs, must show us what your BEE credentials are. And it's on the basis of these 5 criteria that you are given a trusted employer scheme. In other words, you are running your own game. The speed with which you will get people from other countries depends on you and no longer on Home Affairs. It depends on you, how fast you collect that information to bring it to Home Affairs and get your document on the trusted employer scheme. I've already spoken about the frequent updating of the critical skills. Now, let me go to the issue of publication of the amendment regulations. On the 8th of February 2024, the draft immigration regulations were published for public comments with the closing date of the 29th March 2024. The final regulations were published in Government Gazette number 50419 of the 28th of March 2029. A new amendment regulations introduced inter alia the following. The removal of the requirement to submit a radiology report and review of the process of submitting a police clearance certificate. In order not to confuse you, with the trusted employer scheme, all these documents, radiology report, police clearance, the employer will get them on their own. But not every employer belongs to the trusted employer scheme. So those ones, what we have done, we have removed these requirements. For instance, the radiology report was introduced long ago when TB was regarded to be a big problem. And our argument of removing it is that you are aware that in terms of TB, South Africa is right at the top of the list. And so there's no point in requiring radiology report from people of other countries who have removed it. On the issue of police clearance, it was a situation where for the past 5 years, all the countries we have worked with, you have to go and get the police clearance. This has been reduced to only 12 months. Only in the country where you have worked for the past 12 months, you must go and get the police clearance report. If you have worked in other countries more than 12 months before, then that's no longer needed. We also including the modernizing of IT systems. That's very important. And increasing the capacity of the immigration branch. That's also important. The misleading articles in some papers, in various papers, as I've already said, which worried us to call this press conference, is the issue of doing away with critical skills, which I've already repeated twice, that it's not removed. Now, these amendment regulations which were passed on the 28th, many of you will have read in the papers that there was a meeting of NETLEC where the process was questioned because it so happened that the gazetting on the 29th happens a day before the closing date, and NETLEC actually demanded that we withdraw this process because we cut it by 1 day, even though the process has been going on for 60 days. I, as the minister, agree with them and believe maybe it was ill-advised to Gazette at the time as we did. It does nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong in correcting what we think have been done wrongly. So we do agree with Netlec, and we realize that I personally maybe was ill-advised to have allowed that to happen. And so it will be important for me to listen to those who are raising issues. Now, for that reason, these regulations are being withdrawn, and I think we'll withdraw them tomorrow in the Government Gazette. The regulations published on the 28th of March will be withdrawn simply to rectify this small error, not that we are going to change them. And then in the process, we will change other smaller issues which we have picked up, which may not have been understood. Now, but we want to emphasize the amended regulations, as the President has intended, are very important to make much easy to obtain the visas. And this will in turn promote investment in our country. Thank you very much.